Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Compared to What, brought to you by the Compete Network. I'm joined today by my co-host Federico Jorge. Federico, what's up? And today, what we're going to be doing is continuing on the past two episodes that we've been covering, and it's all been around the process of how you go about building a competitive comparison page. That's what this show is all about. Building those key pages that you're going to use on your website as a tool to differentiate you against your competitors. So, up to this point, we've covered the research part. We've covered tips around copywriting and how to actually write really compelling, differentiated copy that's going to grab people's attention and really kind of hit home why you're different and why they should go with your solution over competitors. Today is all about designing that page. And more importantly, probably the most important step is how do you get it out in front of people? How do you distribute it? What do you do once it's done? And so excited to kind of dive into this today. Federico is going to bring us through some slides, but a lot of today is going to be his advice around how to best design these pages and then how to get them out in front of your audience. So without any further ado, Federico, over to you. Let's get into it.
Okay, cool. So like you said, today's topic is design and distribution. So we're going to cover this with a few slides. First of all, let's get into the design aspect. So I think pretty much this is the most important design idea that you need to consider that is very, very specific to comparison pages. I want to see a few more, but this is probably the biggest one. And that is focus on highlighting your brand. And because you're bringing elements from your competitors on these pages, and you're kind of like mentioning them, you're talking about them on these pages, you don't want to make the mistake of using anything that is related to their branding, right? So don't use their logos, don't use any trademark names that they may have, don't use their colors, don't use any fonts that may resemble their brands. Try and stay away for anything that might confuse somebody that is visiting these pages. And for a second, think about, like, if they need, even for a second, to remember whose page is this? Is this, for example, let's take a look at this here. Is this Apollo page? Is this Zoom Info page? Like, if even for just 1 second they get confused, then you need to avoid that, right? And in this case, this is a page for Apollo. It's Apollo versus Zoom Info on the Apollo website. And they're using Zoom Info's logo here for their comparison charts. And I would say try to avoid that as much as possible. You don't want to do any kind of advertising, even if it's very indirect. But also, what you're trying to do is avoid any legal issues, right? A lot of people think these comparison pages are not ethical, or maybe you're gonna get into legal trouble, and that's not a reality. These pages are fair business, mostly everywhere in the world, but when you're using trademark logos or names, right, that's where you could get into legal ground that you don't want to get into, right? So avoid using any kind of specific branded elements from your competitors.
Not something you think about the legal implications of these pages, but I think even just that aside, it's a good idea to, like to your point here, not highlight their brand, just focus on yours. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. And even if there's no legal issue, if nobody's coming up after you, if nobody's sending you a cease and desist letter or anything like that, why would you use any specific branding elements from your competitor? You don't want to do that. So in this case, you just type in Zoom Info with a regular font, whatever font you're choosing to use on this page, and that's it, instead of using their actual logo.
Right.
Okay, what else? Use visuals to sell your uniqueness. So this sounds kind of like a very standard design suggestion, but I think it goes deeper when it comes to comparison pages. And the same way we've seen this during the copywriting episode, you have to find ways to present the information in order to highlight your story and highlight your selling point, right? Now, in this case, this is an example from Basecamp. Some of you probably know it. This is a very shared element from Basecamp's old pricing page. And they were telling the story of saving big, but also this idea of an all-in-one platform versus having to use multiple tools. Now, again, this is not necessarily from a comparison page, but it's a really great way to highlight that comparison of you versus the other solution, right? And I think that what is important to highlight here is at every point when you're writing or when you're at this point designing these comparison pages, ask yourself, how can I tell this story? How can I make this point even clearer by using any visual element or organizing the information in a way that makes sense? Sometimes that's a comparison chart, which is a very standard element that you're going to see or use on your comparison pages. And sometimes it's something slightly different, like in this example from Basecamp. But again, the idea is how can you highlight that winning angle that you're trying to sell on these comparison pages, and then go with that.
Right. Yeah, I like this example here, and we've taught like throughout these episodes, we've touched on a couple of these examples, where it's the alternative to this is just a straight up chart, right? Feature comparison chart. And I feel like a lot of times people's just eyes glaze over when they look at those, or worse, they get into the specifics of just comparing you on features. But if what I like about the visual side is it helps kind of communicate one message. And in the case of this here, especially since they work it into like an equation, like a cost comparison as well. It's really just driving home, like you can look at this, you don't even have to look at the features, and you can quickly tell Basecamp does everything that all of these different tools combined would do, and it's cheaper. Right? And so I like how it's taking something that could be very just generic and not compelling at all, and making it into something that drives home one key message that you have as the top header of that page, right? Which is what we talked about too. It's everything as you go down through should support that key message you want people to walk away with. And in the case of Basecamp here, it's you can do everything in Basecamp you can do with all these tools, multiple tools you have, but it's cheaper too. So
yeah, exactly. And I think the standard approach that everybody would use here is just sticking with this big headline on the subhead, right? Say big, this is the all-in-one tool, replace Slack, Asana, Dropbox, and G Suite, and just say that, and it's just copy, right? Which it would not be bad, but adding this visual comparison adds so much to the story, and like you said it, and I don't think this is here just by chance. I probably I assume that probably somebody that is evaluating these options, Basecamp or all these other tools, they're trying to do this math in their head, right? They're going to Basecamp website and then going, okay, but what if I still use all of these tools? Or maybe I'm already using these tools, right? I'm already using Slack, Asana, Dropbox, and G Suite, and they're bringing that, they're doing the math for me, right? And that's probably what is really useful here, and they're supporting that with a visual statement. The fact that they're telling me, hey, this is how much it's going to cost you. So they're doing that. They're answering that question for me instead of me having to do it manually. They're in my mind already. They're trying to answer the question that I have in my head. How much is it going to cost me versus all these tools that I'm already using or that I should use if I decide not to go with Basecamp? So I think that's what's really interesting here. How this is approached from a very customer-centric perspective.
Yeah, I like the one thing that sticks out to me about this too is that we're talking about visuals here, and I think when people say visuals, it's like, oh, I've got to have like really fancy or like really well done visuals of my product, or this like really cool graphic that's doing something, that's eye catching. It might be cool, and it might, maybe that's a great way to kind of show your differentiation, but we're not talking about super complex visuals here, right? It's thinking more about how can the visual help illustrate the point you're trying to make more clearly and support your copy. It's not a visual for visual's sake.
Yes, exactly.
I think a lot of pages just do that. It's a random graphic. It might look cool, has no context to the rest of the page.
Yeah, and I think a good way, like a trigger that you can use to pause for a second and ask yourself, is there a better way to present this visually? Is if your copy looks like very long, chunky piece of text, then maybe wait a second and ask yourself, could I present the same information in a more visual way that can help me make the same point, but it's going to be easier, it's going to be clearer for somebody visiting this page? And if that's the case, that's probably when you can get to these kind of like visual solutions.
Yeah.
And another thing that I would say, based on what you just shared, I think it's really important that the brief doesn't just go. When I say the brief, the strategic brief that you like how you plan on working on these comparison pages before you start writing them, right? It shouldn't be shared just with your copywriter or your writing team. Like, include your designers in that process and tell them this is the angle that we're trying to make, right? This is the point that we're trying to make. This is the angle that we're choosing versus this competitor. And then don't just give the designer a wireframe and they just need to stick to that, but share the story with them. And probably they're also going to come up with ideas to make that story come to life in a more visual way.
Yep.
This is an example we've seen already, but I wanted to, again, reinforce this idea from the design perspective, right? Use visuals to sell your uniqueness. That's kind of like the topic here. Yep. But the other angle here is try not to blend in. Try not to make the comparison page is about telling people exactly or as clear as possible how your product is different from these other alternatives, right? Yeah. So if your visuals are not supporting that story of how you're different, then it's probably not well solved from a design point of view. And in this case, we've seen it already. These two products, they look basically the same at a glance. It's really hard to distinguish which one is which. Mm-hmm. So maybe reconsider, right? Maybe you don't need this versus image. Maybe you need something else. Maybe you just want to highlight just your product, or maybe highlight different use cases for the Google Chromecast versus the AirTame gadget. But try not to make it look like both products are the same, because that's where you're going to be failing.
Right.
And then this one, use comparison tables in context. Again, we've seen this already from a copywriting point of view, but I wanted to show also how, in this case, Toast does it really, really well from a design point of view. And they're using these smaller comparison charts instead of the big ones with all this information that you need to decode. They're just breaking it down into chunks that are easier to understand, and they're attaching each comparison chart to a specific selling point that they want to make, right? So in this case, they're talking about your business never stays still, blah, 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 and they're comparing Toast versus Micros and Aloha, and they're actually comparing Toast always against these two competitors, but just the fact of breaking it down into smaller chunks makes it easier to digest and really helps focusing the message on one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Back to our point earlier. I think it's in the context showing a comparison chart. I think it's comparing features is not a bad thing, but if it's just one big chart and you kind of leave it to them to kind of put the pieces together and come up with their own conclusion, whereas with this, what you're doing is you're really spoon feeding it to them, and you're saying, okay, here's a point where we win, and here is, if you want to compare side by side features, who has what, then here's your chart. But it's just the ones that we really want you to focus on right now because it supports this message. So I like that.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we're gonna move on to distribution. Like, those are a few tips on how to design comparison pages. Probably you might think, oh, those weren't too many tips, but you can follow the standard guidelines for design when it comes to comparison pages. This is where I really try to narrow this down to very, very specific issues that you might encounter when you're designing these comparison pages. The rest, as long as you follow your best practices, then you're going to be good in terms of design.
Do you ever use...
And then when it comes...
I was just going
Yeah.
to say, do you ever use, and it might be something that maybe, you follow up with and add in the show notes or something, but even if there's a briefing template or a wireframe that you typically use or work with, it'd be something cool that we could link up in the show notes, just so that people have that to work with as well.
That's really interesting. We're actually building that right now. We're creating kind of like uh, variations, but in a
Okay.
wireframe format because we work with multiple clients. No two pages are going to look the same for us, right? Because
Right.
we're going to be using different colors, different fonts, different pictures, all of that. But we do have certain sections that work really well when it comes to comparison pages. So what we're doing right now is we're creating these wireframes where
Yep.
we have I don't know 5 different ways to solve a hero section, 6 different ways to do comparison charts, for example,
Nice.
and then what we're trying to do is kind of like before actually designing the comparison page, we just build it as a wireframe using these different sections that we created,
Yep.
and kind of like gives us a head start, right? It helps us move faster and with more confidence. And at the same time, it helps us visualize, okay, this is how we're going to be telling the story. Is this okay? Should we like change something? Should we improve some of these sections? And then once we define that, we move on to the design stage.
Love
But
it.
that's actually, I think that's a cool idea. Maybe that's a resource that we can share with compared to what listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd love that. Yeah, that's a great idea. That sounds like a cool tool too,
Okay.
even just for your team. Right on. All
Yeah.
right, let's move on.
Okay. Awesome. Distribution. This is a very, very tactical detail. When you're doing ads, when you're doing PPC, again, go back to avoiding any trademark names as much as you can. So in this example, we're looking at a MailerLite ad for a MailChimp related keyword, right? So you can target your competitors. You can use those keywords and put your comparisons in front of somebody that is searching for those keywords. But in the ad, in the creative, don't use their branded names. Don't use MailChimp in this case, because you can get in trouble there. Or even if it is not trouble, you're going to get your ads taken down because chances are MailChimp is already trademarked and added to the Google database, and your ads are not going to be approved.
Yep.
Now, here's an interesting way where MailerLite kind of like uses a reference to MailChimp without using the trademark name. So if you can do that, great. It's not going to be possible every time, but that's just an idea on how to work around that legal issue.
Yeah, and I think there's. I know I at a former company we've run into that situation. And we learned that
Yep.
Google taking our ads down. And so I think there's. I've seen some other ways people do it too, where leaving the chimpanzee is an interesting one for sure. It could be. It also could be something where you say, for example, if they classify themselves as like a particular type of software, and then you see yours as like the new category or the new way, you could refer to
Yeah.
it as that because most people assume or like associate it with that type of word. It also helps you kind of show, like illustrate the new way of doing things, like building on your kind of new, whether it's a category or just like a new subcategory or way of thinking of things. But instead of leaving the chimpanzee, it could be like ditch your, I don't know, insert old legacy type system, something like that.
Yeah.
But one thing I was going to ask you about, so obviously this is paid search, even at a high level too, like for this type of page, what do you feel are the most effective channels for people to be able to distribute these? And like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And
Go for
here
it.
are 10 distribution ideas. Yeah. Some of these are very easy to execute. Some of these are going to be more complex. And these are 10 ways we've discovered that you can use to put your pages, your comparison pages in front of more people. So probably the standard one is the website footer. Maybe you can even bring these comparison pages to your navigation if from a business perspective, from a business strategy perspective, the comparison makes a lot of sense in your space or for your product, then maybe you can bring it to the top now. I do remember, for example, Hey Email did that, like why Hey Email, and they wrote a very strong kind of like manifesto versus the old ways of doing email versus Hey, and they made that the focus of their messaging. So it was a very, I think it was the first link in their main nav, so people would go there and read that page. But there are other examples. I remember Twist, which is a Slack competitor, and they kind of like they build their whole messaging around the stress that Slack creates with constant notifications and all of that, and how they were building a different solution that was more about being mindful around work, less stressed, not always on 24/7 on, right? And and they added that comparison page right at the top. It was one of the most important links on their main navigation. So you can do that if it makes sense from a business perspective. Otherwise, you can always add these comparison pages to your footer, just to make sure that somebody that is landing on your site and it's already at that stage of evaluating you versus different competitors, that they find that answer to those questions, right? Another way to do that is a welcome bar. And we had a lot of success doing this with Cloudways. And again, I think it depends on your space. So Cloudways, they've identified, they're a hosting company, and the hosting space is incredibly competitive, right? Lots of solutions that look pretty much the same. And 99% of the time, somebody that is coming to your website and somebody that might be evaluating using you, they're already coming from a different solution. They already have a hosting solution, and they're switching to something else, right? And they've identified that. They knew that anybody coming to their website, they're probably already using something else. So what they did is, at the top of their website, no matter where you landed on their website, a little welcome bar at the top said something like, "Hey, are you coming from SiteGround, or are you a WP Engine customer? See how we compare." Right? Just a little nudge, and that would lead you to the comparison page. And a lot of people click there, and a lot of people converted via that mini funnel, because we presented the right information at the right time. Right. It was a case of they are coming from SiteGround, or they are switching from WP Engine, and they wanted to read that. They wanted to see how you compare, or how Cloudways compare versus these solutions already. So we just captured them at the right moment, and then we send them to the right asset, which was the comparison pages.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. You could even if you had a kind of like the comparison page directory that we had talked about before, that some people have.
Correct.
So it could be in that case there. If they didn't know, if they had a way to know where these people were coming from and what solution they used, that'd be amazing to personalize it. But otherwise, it could be, coming from another hosting provider. Click here to see how we compare, and then it could go to the
Yeah, exactly. And if you can track this in a more sophisticated way, somebody clicks on an asset that is comparison based, or maybe you released the 10 problems with WP Engine, an article like that, right? And somebody clicks on that, and they come to your website. If you can track that, and you can target people that are clicking on those specific assets, and then say, "Hey, are you switching from SiteGround, or are you seeing this problem with SiteGround?" And see how we compare. Then even better. But if not, at least try to, if you're in a very competitive space, try to capture that intent of, I'm coming from a competitor, I'm evaluating different competitors, and I want to see how you stack against them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, cool. So number 3 is internal linking. This is not necessarily a specific way to bring people to these comparison pages, but it's very, very important in order to build your SEO strength and your organic strength with these comparison pages. If there's any resource that you've already published, or if you can add more content to your site that could be related to the comparison, make sure that you're linking back to the comparison page. And again, just to give you that example, like maybe you had for years, you had this is the problem with WP Engine kind of article on your website, or I don't know, 10 things that people say about WP Engine, and I'm going to keep using that WP Engine versus Cloudways example. Then once you launch this specific comparison page, Cloudways versus WP Engine, go back to that content, go back to that article, and make sure you add a link to the comparison page. It's not only going to create this this cluster topic of keywords and content that is comparison based, which is going to be helpful for Google to rank these comparison pages higher, but it's also going to match the way that people are making those decisions, right? You caught their attention with an article that is more educational based, and then you send them to the comparison based piece, which is more bottom of the funnel, which is closer to now, okay, they're convinced about, they have a problem, they have an issue, they need to switch to something else, and now they want to see how you compare. And that's the way you move people down the funnel.
Right on. Yeah, I like that one.
Okay, sorry, I switched slides here. Okay, number 4 is targeting your brand alternative to. And again, continuing the Cloudways example, we did around 10 or 11 competitor pages, but we didn't do one for Cloudways alternative. And the fact is that people are also searching for that keyword, and it actually has a pretty interesting search volume. So instead of leaving that keyword, Cloudways alternative, for your competitors to rank, you also want to put out a piece of content that ranks for that keyword, so you can control even that aspect of the conversation as well. And how do you do that? You build what we call a comparison hub. A comparison hub is basically, it's similar to your comparison pages. The structure could be similar, but instead of being a comparison between you and a specific competitor, you're trying to tell on that page, like at a glance, how you compare against all these different alternatives in the space. And this is where you gotta be really, really smart in choosing the one thing that makes you different. And it's probably gonna be directly related to your main positioning as a brand. But build that page, tell your story versus all these competitors, and then at the bottom of the page or somewhere around the page, link to the specific, to the individual comparison pages. And that way, again, you're building that cluster topic, right? Where you're linking to Cloudways alternatives, and then from that keyword or from that page, you're linking to each specific comparison page. And then from the specific comparison pages, you can link back to this main comparison hub and just build that that internal linking structure.
I like that. Yeah, that's a smart one. I like this idea.
That makes sense?
I like the idea of someone's looking at alternatives to you, and that could even be an existing customer, and you're really
correct.
An opportunity to again, that existing customers could be a completely other use case for it that a lot of people don't consider. But it's I like that idea of kind of paying for that term that you might not think to normally pay target. So cool.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not targeting that, you're leaving it open for your competitors to answer that question. Somebody's searching Cloudways alternative, and they see a comparison page from WP Engine, SiteGround, blah, 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 and you're not there, right? So you're missing the opportunity to add your own voice to that query.
Yep.
Okay, 5 and 6 are very much related to affiliate marketing. So if you are already doing affiliate marketing, or if you have certain partnerships, and these affiliates, what they're always trying to do is get their hands on assets that are bottom of the funnel and that are converting at a high rate. Because obviously, the higher these pages convert, and the closer they are to turning visitors into paid customers, the more money they're going to make as affiliates, right? So that's really attractive for them. And if you're already working with affiliates, reach out to them and tell them, hey, we created this new asset. This is performing like this. Like you tell them how well that is converting. And if they created certain assets already, they can probably link to the comparison pages. And affiliates, they like to do, especially somebody that is doing YouTube content, they like to do these pieces of content. Hey, Cloudways versus WP Engine, who's the best, right? Because they know those kind of pieces attract a lot of views and attract ready to buy people are ready to buy, right? So if you can give them an asset to your website that allows them to close that sale after somebody watches their content, the chances are they're going to say, "Hey, this is exactly what I needed. Sure, I'm going to link to that piece."
That's
and
smart.
that way you're sending all this affiliate traffic to a very specific asset instead of just your homepage.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes sense too that if you do have affiliates, they're looking for like high converting pages, things that they can use to really kind of, close those sales quickly. And if you say, here, I have this competitive comparison page for you, all you need to do is go out and create a review video and kind of link this up and we'll take care of the rest. I can see how that is something that they'd want to share. That's cool. I like that one.
Yeah, and it's also a way to hack your way into the search results, because sometimes you're not competing against your competitors in the SERP, right? When somebody's searching for I don't know, again, Cloudways or WP Engine alternative, maybe what you're seeing is not different hosting services that are showing their comparison pages. What you're seeing is affiliate content, right? And you're seeing, I don't know, a publication that talks about the best hosting services, and they have a review around WP Engine and WP Engine alternatives. And it's really hard to outrank them because they have a lot of content built around those topics, and they have authority for that kind of content. So it's really hard for Google to say, hey, I'm going to put you at the top of this article that is already ranking number one.
Yeah.
So instead of fighting that battle, why not reach out to that publication that is already ranking number one and say, hey, this is a great piece of content you've written. Why don't you send traffic to this comparison page? And that way, it's not the same, but it's kind of like you're ranking number one, and it's a shortcut to the number one place in the search results.
Smart.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Then we have ads, ad stuff. So we have Google Ads. This is pretty standard. Kind of covered that already, so I don't want to stop too much here. But use comparison pages for your PPC campaigns. It makes a lot of sense. Target all these competitor keywords. See what's working, what's not. But a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of e-commerce products, they're targeting these competitor keywords, but they're sending people to a standard homepage instead of a comparison-based asset. And I feel that that's just wasting that click, because if somebody is trying to get to your competitor's website, then the best way to answer and persuade them to consider you instead is not going to be just your homepage. It's going to be telling them why you versus this other solution that they were actually looking for.
Right.
And then the retargeting ads, I think it makes sense from a customer journey perspective. If somebody goes to your website, they could be landing on any piece of content. They could be going to your blog. They could be going to more problem-aware pieces of content, or maybe they went to your homepage and to your pricing page, but they didn't convert, right?
Right.
That visitor is not lost. That lead is not lost. Maybe they're considering you, they're evaluating you, but they haven't made their decision just yet. And one of the reasons is probably because they're still trying to figure out which of these alternatives is a better fit for them, right? Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, they're shortlisting you and they're considering you versus XYZ alternatives. So if you keep retargeting them, try to chase them down with comparison-based ads, right? And tell them how you compare versus WP Engine, how you compare versus SiteGround. And if you hit the right competitor that maybe they're evaluating, and get them to come back to your site and get them to see that comparison page, that might be the last piece of the puzzle that they need in order to make that decision.
I like
so
that.
Using retargeting ads with comparison-based content, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's good. It's a good approach too, because, and it is also where one of those kind of, I forget the word you had for it, but it was the kind of the hub, the comparison page hub would be helpful
Yep.
to if you don't know what competitor they're comparing you to versus trying to like hope you hit them with the
Yep.
right one. But I
Yes.
think it's good because when you approach it from when you think of it from the perspective of most people are out there doing, and we know this, more of the evaluation is being done before they ever talk to sales, right? And so
Hmm.
if you think of someone who's been to your site, chances are there's a large portion of them that are doing comparing vendors, doing a lot of the evaluation, probably working with other people internally to like build a sense of like who's strong for our criteria and all of that. And so if you think of it from the perspective of you want to, with your retargeting, instead of just being like, hey, we missed you, come back, which is I feel like a lot of people do. Um,
Yep.
I think it's just know that they're trying to evaluate vendors and help them. So sending them to a comparison page is actually coming from the perspective of we want to help you do this job that you're trying to do on your own right now, so that when you're ready to come talk to us, you have a good sense of how we compare. I like that approach.
Exactly. That is exactly the strategy behind using retargeting ads.
Yeah.
And in a similar fashion, you can also use organic social media for that. Because somebody that is following your brand, you could have thousands of followers on LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you use,
Mm-hmm.
but not everyone is going to be a customer, right? You have a huge chunk of followers that are not necessarily your customer. And why? Maybe because they got interested in your brand at some point. Maybe they loved or they wanted to join a webinar or whatever, and they started following you, but they never converted. But they might still be in that evaluation stage, in that consideration stage, and they're trying to figure out what the best solution for them is. Then why not post social media stuff that pushes that comparison and
Mm-hmm.
attract
Yeah.
that segment of your followers that are closer to making that decision and that might be evaluating you versus others. And then boom, if you can convince them at that point, then like you said, like you're just meeting them at the right time in their
Yeah.
decision
Even
journey. Yeah.
if you know that these types of pages are some of your highest converting pages, it's
Mm-hmm.
this could be the link you want to put in your Twitter profile. It could be the link you want to put in. You know what I mean? Like it could be the one thing you want to drive people to if it's what's converting
Yeah.
mostly, and if you assume that most people are actively comparing. It's like why not just send them right there? But I know that obviously depends for a lot of companies, but and some people
Yeah.
first thing you do might not be to send them to a page where you talk about competitors, but it's something to
Mm-hmm.
consider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a very smart way to put it. If you can understand when a visitor already knows the fundamental of your solution, and
Hmm.
then they're going to move to the next stage, which is okay, but here's option A, option B, option C. Which one is going to be for me? Then, if you figure out at which point that visitor, that lead, moves to the next stage, then push the comparison based content as much as possible, because chances are you're gonna.
Yeah. The last
The last
one.
one is battle cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably know so much more about battle cards than we do. But yeah, if you've done all this research, because probably you've got a lot of insights while building these comparison pages. You've
Hmm.
noticed certain stuff that your competitors are not really great at, stuff where places or angles where you are winning versus them. So bring those insights to your battle cards. Don't waste the opportunity of updating them if you already have them, or creating them if you don't have them already, because all of these insights are going to be absolutely valuable for your reps.
Yeah.
Don't just wish for them to go to your comparison page, but bring this information in front of them as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things we know works really well, especially when you're building out uh, for our customers at Klue, building out their battle cards and the individual cards within them, is this idea of a no say show framework, right? So it's what the rep needs to know, giving them the context, the say, what
Mm-hmm.
is the talk track, the recording of like how to respond to this objection, for example, and then the show. And the
Yeah.
show is what do you share with them? What do you show during the call? Could it be a slide? Could it be a follow up piece? The show is these pages in a lot of cases. So it's you're not only with a battle card, you're not only enabling reps with what to say, but you're enabling them with what to show afterwards, what to send afterwards. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
I think these types of pages are gold for that. So agreed.
Yeah, and maybe what you can even do is like repurpose these comparison pages for sales calls, because like scrolling up and down these comparison pages while you're on a call with someone might not be the best experience. So if you can, and again, we go back to this idea of breaking your comparison page charts into chunks, into smaller pieces that you can easily digest. If you've done that effort already, then why not share like a 10 slide deck with your reps where you put all these pieces of information, comparison based information, on those slides, and they can go to that specific one. Let's say you're talking about pricing. Boom, you go to that pricing comparison, and it's just the pricing, and you've given your reps a very strong, very easy to understand piece of content that they can immediately share with someone on a call, instead of, like you said, going to the whole comparison page. You just bring that element to the sales call instead.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so those are 10 distribution ideas for your comparison pages.
Great ideas.
And the last one is a gift, kind of like to wrap up all these episodes around how to build your comparison pages. We created this mini tool, which is called the Competitive Keyword Generators. You can go to StackAgainst.com/CKG.
Cool.
And basically, you're going to get a very simple form. You just add your product and then add all the competitors that you want. So in this case, let's say you're Asana, you can add Monday, Trello, ClickUp, everyone in the project management space, and then add your email in there, and you're going to get a keyword report just like this one, where you can see the search volume for all these different competitive-based keywords. And hopefully that's going to kickstart your strategy and your thinking for these comparison pages. At least it's going to give you the SEO perspective, so you can start figuring out which competitors to target for your comparison pages.
Love that. So then they go to that link there, they'll go to this page. This output that they get, basically what they'll do here is a very easy way for them to know what pages to prioritize first.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what keywords they should be trying to rank for with those, or pay for with those.
Yeah, because it's not just which competitor, but as you can see, for example, versus Monday, Asana versus Monday has so much more volume than, let's say, Monday pricing or Monday versus Asana. Like this is kind of crazy, but Asana versus Monday has 10 times more volume than Monday versus Asana, and technically it looks like the same. But if you can rank and target this keyword instead, you're going to get way more traffic.
And if you were, I don't know, project management, XYZ, a new solution trying to break into this space, you could look at this and you could say Asana versus Monday. All right, I should do my solution versus Asana versus Monday, right? We talked about this in a previous episode. Try to piggyback off this keyword that gets a lot of search volume and attach your solution to it, so you can piggyback off that. Yeah, Federico, these last few episodes have been awesome. So it's kind of walked us through this process of how do you do the research for these competitive comparison pages, right? How do you write the copy, right? How do you write compelling, differentiated copy? How do you tips around how to design really concise, compelling pages, and then how do you get those out, right, and use them to drive really high qualified traffic and generate and convert that through these pages, and how to get those out to the people that need to see it. So I feel like this is great. Like anyone who's looking to, this is your first episode tuning in, definitely encourage you to go back and watch the last few. We'll link it all up in the show notes too, so you can go back and find those episodes. But yeah, this is really all you need to be able to go out and build those high converting competitive comparison pages. So Federico, thank you so much as always. Everyone, thanks for watching. Tune into the next episode, and until then, we'll talk to you later. Thanks, everybody.